What is up? It's your boy, the Duke of Damon Vogler, the king with no rings, your grandma's favorite GM, Z-Monday, and it is time for Zachetology. We have a long weekend with absolutely nothing happening, so I figured, we should give the people what they want. Let's make a little content. Let's talk about the first round playoff matchups. You guys know Zachetology. I'm going to talk about the first round, predict how it goes, and that's it. So, quick overview just of the playoffs as a whole. The first round in the West is about to be fantastic. It's about to be 4 certified banger matchups, maybe 3.5. I don't know how I feel about the Grizz Thunder, but a lot of fantastic matchups. Meanwhile, the East, trash. The East has about a half of a matchup in total. I think the Raptors and the Magic and the Cavs Wizards are both about a quarter of a real matchup, and that's about it. Not a lot going on. So without further ado, let's get into the individual matchups. We're going to start with the East because it's going to go a little quicker, and then we can get to the West where the real sauce is. So we'll start at the bottom of the bracket with the Hawks versus the Bulls. Look, there's not a lot to talk about in terms of the matchups. Adams' Bulls are fucking trash. They're not going to be doing anything. This is a 4-0 sweep. Everybody knows it. So instead, I will take this time to congratulate Tyler on getting the 1 seed. Look, the East is terrible. You don't need me to tell you that. But nonetheless, the Celtics are in the East, so there was one other team to compete against. And so, props to Tyler for beating out Gasper. That is not easy. Well done. Also beating out Brian. Although I won't lie, I'm not as bullish on Brian's squad, but we'll talk about him in a little bit. So well done, Tyler. Enjoy your bye round. And we'll see you against Brian on Tuesday. Sick. Let me put in the scores. I'm going to be fancy. Let's put in. The Bulls are going to remain a 0, so we don't have to do any editing there. But the Hawks, they're going to get 4 big wins. It's going to be sick. I literally think it's impossible for the Bulls to win a single game. Maybe I'm wrong. That's how bad this one is. The other ones, we might get 4 wins in the East. We know the result already, but there could be a victory. No, for the Bulls. Next up, we have the Cleveland Color Bait versus the Washington Wizards. The Cavs have the 4 seed, but they are away because the Wizards won 14 more games than the Cavs. The Wizards have a real roster. The Cavs just have a bunch of blue players. I will be fair to the Cavs. Brasidio is a real player. Efren Strong is an interesting player. So, there are players on this squad for Cleveland that I like. Horacio Soto, also a very solid player. But in classic Jesse fashion, despite owning talent, shout out Svatos, he's done absolutely nothing with it. And although there's a lot of blue players, there's really nothing filling in the cracks on this team outside of the 3 dudes I mentioned. Your next best player is a 34-year-old Lou Danis, I think, or a Malcolm Benson, who I don't like Malcolm Benson all that much at all. It's pretty ugly. So, I don't know. Jesse, you got to pick good players, not blue players. The Wizards have a real team. Ricky Trapp's going to get a ton of steals. And Owen Lamb Jr. is just going to be a nice defensive player. This is not going to be all that saucy. Between Ricky Trapp and Bam Graham scoring, they're going to sauce the Cavs. This could maybe the Cavs in an absolute perfect storm get 2 games, but I don't even think they're going to get that. I got to get back to the thing to do the scores. This is going to be a gentleman's sweep in favor of the Wiz. Brian is feasting on the fact that there's a total of 2 GMs in the, I guess there's 3 if we count Tyler as being back now, but there's 3 GMs in the East. Speaking of real GMs in the East, the next matchup, the number 2 Celtics versus the number 7 Heat. So, before Jesus was killed by Bog, proving the superior deity in the world of the RBSL, I at least thought this was going to be fun to watch. I think, for whatever reason, I don't know if Alex was intentionally sandbagging, but I swear to God his team was better than 39 wins in the East. I haven't been paying super close attention, but just Mark Lilly, Guzlane, and Dietz in isolation, nothing else. I just feel like they got to win more games than that. So how they didn't, I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing the rest of the roster is absolute garbage, but I was at least interested to see what those guys could do. The Celtics are superior. The Celtics were going to smack them. There was no way they were going to win. But now when you add the Deeds injury, I mean, this has just got 4-0 written all over it. The goal for Alex is winning a single game. The Celtics are probably the favorites to come out of the East, even though the Hawks have the better record. We can get to that in later Zachetologies as we get to the deeper rounds. But, Cade Cunningham, Clinton Cochran, they're going to run trade right through Miami. So let's just do Miami, I think, is getting 0 wins on this one. Meanwhile, the Celtics are going to get 4 big ones. All right, the final matchup in the East, the Raptors versus the Magic. This one is also not super interesting, but a little interesting, only because Marco has a superior team. If you just go based on talent, the Raptors are arguably like a top 5 team in the league. Hilton and Starry, what a great wombo combo. And they have Francis Porter, and they have that other dude who's like the small forward, what's his name? Zubero, who's a nice player. Roberto Zubero. Not great, but like large, plays defense, is an average level scorer, so he's not like actively harming your team. So the Raptors super talented. The big question is like, is anybody going to be setting the game plan in Toronto? And if they do, are they going to fuck it up in some wild way? Are they going to do something heinous like play zone defense, 10-10 in the game plan? I don't know. Ken, on the other hand, has just an inferior squad. I don't love Ken's squad right now. He's kind of stuck between eras. It's like, do I think Timothy Hamilton could be good in 3 years? Yes, Timothy Hamilton looks like he's going to be... I mean, he's not quite got the offensive profile of Chuck D, but it's closer to that than far away from that if he maxes it all out. I mean, A inside, A three-point shooting, 6'5", A quickness, A strength. He's missing the jump, but still. And he's also going to be a great defender. But right now, this whole team is basically Modolina and Ivan Miller, which is a dubious front court if we're talking about like contending for a championship. I like Modolina as a defensive anchor, although he does nothing else, and I like Ivan Miller as kind of like more like a 6th man off the bench spark plug guy than your starting power forward because of his foul issues. And then there's Aguirre. So it's like the rest of this is ugly filling in the cracks. It's like you have a Whitney Curse as your small forward, who is clearly not a small forward. The man is like a power forward through and through, arguably even a center. I don't know. Ken won a bunch of games because he was in the East, but his plus minus is minus 0.2, which, by the way, Ken is the 6th seed, so can we talk about how terrible the Heat and the Bulls are? Anyways, back to reality, or back to this matchup. I just don't see how Ken can come up with a good game plan. I just don't see how he can possibly touch the Raptors, but this could be dramatic. Ken's got nothing to lose. I don't know if he can try, like, his roster is so limited. I don't think there's, like, some magic crazy thing to try. Like, can you put Luka Garza in, like, I don't know, like Luka Garza is kind of like the player who doesn't start that could maybe do something interesting. But I don't see a lot of answers for Ken. I think he's going to maybe get 2 games off of Marco because Marco, I don't think he's capable of putting out an optimal game plan. He could totally prove me wrong. But so that's basically how I'm feeling about this matchup. One sec. How do I update this thing with the right score? It's somewhere. Here it is. All right. The Magic, I think, are going to get 2 games. Meanwhile, the Raptors will get 4. I think it's going to get ugly fast for the Raptors when we get to the next round because they have to play Gasper. But Marco, the king of drafting dudes who plus TC, big shout out Hilton, is going to get one in the win column. All right, so the East is over. Again, not a ton to talk about. So let's get to where the goods are here, and it's in the West. Like I said, basically all of these matchups are bangers. Even the Grizzlies Thunder has some drama to it, even though I think that one is pretty clear who's going to win. So we're going to start at the top on this one, the 1-8 Grizzlies Thunder. Look, if you're Adam, statistically speaking, you absolutely dominated the entire league. So not only was your team in the West, but you still came out with the highest plus minus of all teams by a thin margin. But again, your schedule is significantly harder than someone like the Celtics, who were contending with you for best like stats in the league, like advanced stats. He's got the 2 of the top 5, 6 players. I don't know where you want to throw Arroyo and Suggs. They're both in there. He has a surrounding cast that, although I don't love, fits the team well. Like, I actually think that Warnke only works on this team. Korpa's, I'm not sold on at all. And then Barrett did and Chris Arnold are just like, they're basically replacement level big men in this roid era of talent. But Arroyo and Suggs are so good that it doesn't matter. So it's weird to say this because the Grizzlies just, like I said, most wins in the league, best advanced stats. But I feel like they're not as good as their stats say. They're still extremely good. And then there's the Thunder, who I feel the opposite about. I feel like the Thunder in the first half of the season looked like they were going to be one of those teams contending for the 2 through 5 seeds, along with like the Sonics and the Spurs and the Nuggets. But then they fell off super hard. And now, if you want to get extra deep into it, Cody has been a known according to Cody, he's a sandbagger and cares less about winning games in the regular season and more about testing exotic lineups so he can do well in the playoffs. So there's an argument to be made that, the Grizz are a couple points on their plus-minus worse than they should be. The Thunder are a couple plus-minus points better than they were in the regular season. Which would mean there could be drama here. Now, to add on to that, as far as the actual specific matchup, this is all about offense versus defense on the guards. So Jalen Suggs and Arroyo, obviously, like the two best offensive guards in the entire league. But Cody has the best defensive guard in the league in Mac Pappas. Maybe there's some other guard who's like a god-tier defender, but Pappas has A quickness. He's giant. I think he's 6'7" or 6'8". He's an AA on the perimeter D, and he's incapable of fouling. You just put him at shooting guard and let Adam figure out who he's going to play. And then the big question for Cody is, do you start Larry Escobedo or do you start Natasha Romanoff? They're kind of different types of defenders. I think Larry Escobedo is better against three-point shooting because he's taller, and I think height is super important in that. But it's really, dealer's choice. That's going to be a big decision Cody has to make. And then you basically just put Isaiah Todd against the mediocre Grizzlies front court and hope he can go ham. It's a long shot for Cody. I don't honestly think he's going to come out with the victory. However, crazier things have happened. The Thunder are a talented squad. The Grizzlies are top heavy, so if you can somehow lock those two dudes up with your guard defenders, there's a chance. I think we're going to get a 4-2, but we won't know until we see. And this is one where, I don't know, I probably give the Grizzlies like a 90% chance of winning, which for a 1-8 matchup most years is not that great. Like, the Hawks Bulls is like a 99.99% chance, but still very good. I honestly think, I don't know if this might be a harder round for Adam than the next rounds just because of the individual matchups and the fact that the Thunder are maybe the best perimeter defense team in the league. The Sonics are also quite good at perimeter defense, but they're not going to play till the end. So anyways, I like Adam a lot. This is, Cody's chance to prove that he's the boy genius, the new GM with all the great plays, especially after doing his finals run last season, which, if Cody goes and blows a bunch of playoff series over the next 10 years, people might look back on less fondly, but if he goes and spins up a couple more upsets as a bottom seed, I think people will be like, oh, Cody knows something. So this is a great chance for him to build the case in either direction. All right, the 4-5 matchup, we have the Nuggets versus the Suns. These two teams are probably two of the more well-balanced, non-top heavy teams. The Nuggets especially, the Suns are a little more top heavy, but the Nuggets obviously are driven by Roland Humbert. He is like the engine around which this team churns. He just finished another nearly 30 points per game on 65% true shooting. And then it's kind of these defensive pieces around him. Tony Pruitt, the flawed but exciting big man. Scotty Barnes, just a very rock-solid power forward. And then Caleb Westmoreland. So this team, the Nuggets are weird because you would think I just named a bunch of guys around Roland Humbert who are very good at defense. The Nuggets only finished 9th defensively, which is not fantastic. The Nuggets are a very balanced team, 10th on offense, 9th in defense. Meanwhile, the Suns are the best team in the league in offense first, and the Suns do not play defense. Now, the big matchup here is going to be Caleb Westmoreland versus what is likely going to be Jason Love. It might be Happy Gilmore, but at the end of the day, the Nuggets don't really have two great guard defenders. Caleb is a weird one, because is Caleb a good guard defender or is he a bad guard defender? I think he's a good guard defender against someone who's 6'1", and he's a bad guard defender against someone who's like 6'3", 6'5". And the problem for the Nuggets is the Suns' two starting guards are 6'3" and 6'5". That's going to be a tough matchup. Now, Humbert is going to go ham against the Suns because the Suns don't have a quality small forward of any type. So they're basically just going to be like, I don't know who, the Suns have no one on their roster who can guard Humbert, so Humbert's going to go off. But the problem then for the Nuggets becomes in the front court matchup, the Nuggets have an undersized front court at 6'10 in Tony Pruitt and 6'8 in Scotty Barnes. The Suns have probably the tallest front court in the league outside of maybe the Sonics, with the 7'7 Prince Chapman and then a 7'1 Dean Stevens at power forward. So Evan told me when we were talking separately that this was his ideal matchup. He thought this was going to be like, of anybody he could have gotten in round one, this was who he wanted the most. And I kind of originally agreed with that thought because I thought, well, the Suns were kind of front runners. This was before the Dean Stevens trade. The Suns had a great record, but I actually hated their team. They were terrible. Kai Jones is just not Dean Stevens. It's basically that simple. And I like Prince Chapman and I like Jason Love, but they're not really a team that can play any defense. And even if they're a good offensive team, they were just going to get cooked by mediocre players. Now the addition of Dean Stevens changes everything because they've got the crazy height. They can be like a stock forward team, like Happy Gilmore Stock City, Prince Chapman Stock City, Dean Stevens Stock City. So now they kind of have this cohesive, the defense is about turnovers, not about low field goal percentage. So I worry for Evan, and it's really going to come down to if Humbert can just go off. It's going to be Humbert needs to go for 40, which he totally could. And if Humbert can go for 40 every time, then I think the Nuggets have a good shot. That being said, the Suns are the 5 seed, but they are going to have home court. And for that reason, plus what I think are favorable matchups outside of the small forward position, I think the Suns are going to take this. I think 4-2 might be a little bold, so I'm going to go with a 7-game series with the Nuggets winning 3 and the Suns winning 4. But yeah, fireworks. Like I say, certified banger. Also, one last note on this matchup. Remember, Max Seymour is going to be making the lineup for this Suns team. I actually think this is interesting because I never thought Max was necessarily the best game planner. Really, Max was the best GM in making trades and assembling great rosters. This is going to be a great chance. He's going to get a lot of hard matchups in these playoffs. So we'll see whether he has the sauce to make it happen. All right, moving on to the 3 seed versus the 6 seed. We have the San Antonio Cameron Turners versus the Houston Rockets. This series is also just razor thin. Statistically speaking, the Spurs have a minor edge. The Spurs looked like the 2 seed basically the entire way up until the last sim when they were overtaken by the Sonics. They've been one of the more consistently strong teams, and that's honestly probably more to do with just their schedule being a little more balanced than other teams, and they were just good the whole time. But the Spurs worry me because I don't think the Spurs necessarily pass the eye test. When you look at people on this team past Cameron Turner, who's obviously goated, I kind of hate the team. I think they're players I like as role players, but they don't have a second guy who's the guy. They have Dabino, who I like as a power. I don't even know if I like him as a power forward. I think I like him as a small forward. I wish he was playing there. Yeah, I'm looking at his stats right now. Dabino should really be a small forward. I like Steve Rogers, I guess, off the bench as a 6th man. But those are the only pieces I really like. I do not like their big men at all in Freddie Newton, in Raul King, excuse me. I do not like Jalen Johnson. Tad D'Elia is he's fine. That's all he is. He's fine. Yeah, nothing about this says strong team in the West. So yeah, I'm when I look at the Spurs and think 2 or 3 seed in the West, I think they might have gotten a little. I don't know why they did so well, but some favorable something in there. Now the Rockets, on the other hand, do not have a Cameron Turner. However, they do have their own very good star guard in Arden Justice, who I don't know what happened over these last 2 seasons, but the man just exploded in terms of I guess 3 seasons ago is when he exploded. He went from a low 60s to a high 60s scorer and just started stacking points per game. I mean, 25 points per game this season, 67 true shooting. It's nuts. And he's an A perimeter defender, all while being 6'8" at point guard. I like Arden Justice a lot. The rest of this team is kind of solid. I'm not necessarily in love with them. Arlen Mitchell ended up being a lot worse than expected. Bryant maybe pulled the trigger a little early. Can you imagine if this team, when Bryant traded away Jalen Green, Bryant could just have Jalen Green on this team on top of everybody else, right? So you could just replace whoever his starting shooting guard is, Coach Beard, with Jalen Green, who's just outside of passing, superior in every single way. Kind of crazy. But he does not have Jalen Green. So he's kind of like Art and Justice and a solid core around him. Chala and Jules Jimenez is his front court. The the size is there. I don't know about the athleticism. Jules Jimenez is not athletic. But both of them are seriously flawed. T'Challa just like is C across the board while being a mega athlete. And then Jimenez, while he has great ratings, is super unathletic. So both of those guys are kind of like fatally flawed. Again, I just said Arlen Mitchell only turned out okay. Richard Caldwell is fine. I like Richard Caldwell kind of as like a starting power forward. Actually, I'm looking at his stats now. He's better than I thought. So, all right, I like Richard Caldwell. Man scored at a great clip. But anyways, I don't really think that's where the big matchup is here. I think the simple fact is the Spurs are going to have to play Cameron Turner, and it's about where they're going to play Cameron Turner. They've traditionally played him at point guard for a long-ass time. And the problem with playing Cameron Turner at point guard is that he's a terrible guard defender. He's got C- perimeter, D plus steal. And where that becomes extra problematic is when the best scorer on the other team is a point guard. And that's what the Rockets have. And so I think Art and Justice is going to go off, and I think the Rockets are going to upset the Spurs. Brian is already, as just like a coach at a generic level, better in my opinion. The man is consistently overperforming his teams in the playoffs. But I also just like, if you didn't tell me their win totals and their seeds, I would have said the Rockets are just better. Along with the fact that they also have what I think is the advantageous matchup. So I actually think this could be not a reverse blowout, but I think a 4-2 against the Spurs. I think this could go really poorly. I expect the Spurs offense to look kind of confused and anemic. I just don't know how the Spurs are going to score the 100 points a game they need to get these wins. And they don't have a great defense. So I'm a little confused with Dave's team. I've looked at it a few times now, and I've said it like 5 times already, so I'll shut up and move on with the final matchup. But I'm just confused how this team ended up as the 3 seed. Like, am I missing something? What is Cameron Turner doing that's that good? Like, he scores, I guess Cameron Turner's that good. But he doesn't play defense. I don't know. It's got me shook, man. I'm missing something. But alas. Sorry, Dave, for slandering your team for the last 5 minutes. I do think you're going to lose, though, man. And I hate saying Bryant's going to win. Ugh, makes me sick. The final matchup, the number 2 seed Sonics versus the number 7 seed Blazers. This one is also a certified banger. If for no reason other than we get the Vogler-Mobley matchup. I know Adam did his player rankings, and I think he said Vogler was the 3rd best player in the league and Mobley was the best player. I think there's a case to be made that this is the 2 best players in the league playing each other. I personally just do not like Cameron Turner's defense, and even though his offense is clearly better than Vogler just is the best rebounder in the league, and he's arguably the best man defender in the league. So my point is this might be the 2 best players in the league, so that's going to be fireworks. Now, the interesting thing is that these guys might not even have a direct matchup. I haven't figured out what the hell I'm going to do with Vogler. Obviously, it's Friday night, and the playoffs are on Monday. But Vogler has been traditionally my center, and Mobley has traditionally been the Blazers' power forward. Now, do you want, who wins if they get matched up? I think they kind of neutralize each other, and it becomes more about everybody else on the team. Mobley is more likely to win the matchup and go ham. He's just the slightly better offensive player. But then again, Vogler is just a better defender. Mobley has the athleticism. I could go back and forth on this forever. In terms of the rest of the team, the rest of the Blazers, the rest of the Sonics, it's hard to debate that the Sonics aren't better. The Sonics, while the Blazers have Zealy is a questionable defender at this point. I think he's a B defender at 6'1". Oh, no, he's an A perimeter defender, but he's 6'1", at shooting guard, and he's going to most likely be matched up against Jalen Green. And so that one, this is going to be one of those classic ones where I've always been of the opinion, and I know there's a bunch of Emilio Zealy fans who think he's a fantastic elite player, that he's a pub stomper. Emilio Zealy will go for 50 against bad teams, but when he gets put up against bigger, high-quality defenders, he melts. And so I worry that's what's going to happen when he plays the Sonics, who have a very good perimeter defender in Jalen Green and another good perimeter defender in whoever the hell I start at point guard, because it's just All those guys are AA defenders of some height, taller than 6'1". And then the third player for both these teams, like the third player for the Blazers is nobody. It's like Tafawa Adebola, who, like, fine, he's a limited passer and that's all he does. Or it's Patricio Navarra, who Patricio Navarra is just not good. He's a terrible defender. Meanwhile, on the Sonic side of things, there's a Todd Burnside, who is very, very good player. Like, not like elite, but certainly better than the third best player. And then the fourth best players, like, I just like the Sonics bench a little more. Like, there's a Jason Livingston, a first team all defense guy, and Andrew Hunter, a great sniper. Meanwhile, the Blazers bench is pretty ugly. So, the one thing the Blazers have going for them is they have two dudes who can go for 50, which the Sonics do not have. I think Jalen Green and Vogler are more the types of dudes who play more consistent ball and they'll go for 30, but they're never going to explode and go absolutely nuts. I think Vogler has that in him, but now that there's other offensive weapons who are scoring, like Green and Burnside, it's going to happen less than in previous years where it was like the Vogler show. It still kind of is the Vogler show, but just less so offensively. And if there's any team that can shut down Zealy and Mobley, it's the Sonics. The Sonics were, I think, ranked the third best in defense this season, but that's only because their offense is not as good, and so they didn't get the best defense is a good offense thing going for them in terms of, like, limiting missed shot fast breaks and shit like that. I think in just pure, like, half-court defense, it's hard to debate that the Sonics probably aren't the best. Just, like, you look at the ratings, and it's like everybody's an A defender. A lot of the guys are plus in terms of athleticism and height. It's kind of wild. So I think this will be a banger, though. Like, the Blazers are good at winning games they shouldn't because Zealy goes for 40, because Mobley goes for 50, and the Sonics don't have that to their advantage. So I could see the Blazers, like, picking up games in Seattle that they don't deserve, but also dropping games in Portland that they should win. I think at the end, it'll be a home court advantage type of thing, but very much a saucy matchup. These are my playoff predictions. I'm guessing we're going to get ourselves a Grizzlies-Suns matchup, little Adam Max sauce, get ourselves a Bryant-Zach matchup. I don't know if the last time we played was the whole injury drama, but that, I think, is the defining factor in the Rockets-Sonics rivalry when the Rockets had, like, 5 of their players get injured, and we almost changed the rules. Meanwhile, out east, we're just waiting for the good matchups. Get ourselves a little Marco Gasper, see if Marco is a real GM, and then Brian Tyler, which old head is the best? So thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Did I predict every matchup wrong, or am I on point? I don't know, but it was fun to talk about. Stay breezy. Toodles.